Good afternoon and welcome back to the channel. This week we are rebuilding the front axle, which starts with salvaging the parts that we need off the old one. Let's rescue the little dust cap for the top nut and proceed with a little lube on the nut thread. An Allen key to hold the thread while a socket turns the nut. And because we've used a spark plug socket, we can use a spanner while the Allen key stays in place with the ratchet. The old top mount slides off, and we need to keep this piece underneath called the upper spring perch along with these two small washers. Kaputski spring goes in the bin, and we also need to keep these rubber spring seats, but not the bump stop, which I'll also order. Well, no need to state the obvious damper failure here. Tasty, but not healthy. For those of you also doing this job, let's recap what we need to keep and what we need to bin. And here's a short time lapse of the other side, where we need to employ the spring compressor because the spring is actually intact, but it will also get replaced. Episode flashback, where we pick up from last time talking about the small bracket holding on the anti-roll bar and this little screw here. Here we have two knuckles, and this one is the replacement. This is the original. So I'm going to try and explain the Kaputski that we made. This knuckle here is okay, but this screw in particular, which I successfully managed not to Kaputski. Just for reference, I'm leaving this in picture. And this one is the knuckle which I removed first. I'm going to insert a graphic. Driver's side spring was broken and the passenger side spring was still exerting pressure. There was a mismatch between the left and the right side. Imagine this part was still connected to the anti-roll bar. It was pushing up by a little bit of pressure by the anti-roll bar, so I can demonstrate this. Basically, as you push, you can see the bracket is actually starting to twist, and because of that, this was forcing this bolt to come out at an angle. This screw is now coming out at an angle. What did that mean? Well, we can actually clearly see the effect of steel pushing against aluminium. Pretty self-explanatory. The entire threaded hole became an unthreaded hole. That effectively rendered this whole knuckle scrap, because this bracket is actually what supports the anti-roll bar, and I was not comfortable reusing this with a nut, for example, or retapping this. And so this week's Kaputski is destruction of one small threaded hole, effectively rendering the whole knuckle completely useless. Binsky. Luckily for me, E39s are still relatively common in Germany, and plenty are being broken, so I managed to find an identical replacement with a undamaged threaded hole. But the main thing is I now have replacement knuckle that I can match with the knuckle I didn't break. €26 including postage. One of my favourite German words is verschlimmbessern, which basically means making something worse by trying to fix it. So in the process of trying to fix the car, I basically made it worse. Anyway, I will clean up the original knuckle, the replacement knuckle, change out the bearings, and enough talking. Let's do some work. Cleaning up these aluminium knuckles is simply unnecessary, but the attitude of while you're in there always gets to me. So there was no way these would be refitted without some attempt to clean them. I started off with some alloy wheel cleaner and a soft brass wire brush to get most of the oily grained in grime off. After a couple of rounds and a good rinse, I used 600 grit wet and dry sandpaper to clean the machine surfaces. A brass wire wheel and a drill to finish off the other surfaces. And that will do nicely for a daily driver. And here's another flashback to episode 2 to remind ourselves of how the knuckles looked before. Consider subscribing so that you can tune in next time to watch the shiny rebuild of the refreshed front axle.